Welcome to the Prescription Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lynette Hewitt, GP and personal trainer, bringing you health and strength without the hype. Thanks for listening. Rachel, thank you for joining me on the podcast. I think it's really generous of you to give your time. I'll just set the background as to how we've come to be having this conversation today, in that I read an article in Grazia magazine which was headlined something along the lines of the hidden rise of eating disorders in midlife women. It was a fairly short article, but it highlighted something that I thought, yeah, this isn't really on people's radar. We have got so caught up in the whirlwind talking about weight loss injections and how they've changed the conversation about weight and body image, that we have almost certainly overlooked a cohort of women who will probably be really struggling with that public conversation. And then it got me thinking about my own experience of seeing patients with eating disorders and how my mind immediately went to younger women and teenage girls. And I think it's probably fair to say they are the face of eating disorders. And I was delighted that you reached out as somebody who has real world experience of being on the patient side of this, and you were happy to share your experience and talk about it. So do you want to just introduce yourself, say particularly in terms of what you do for a living, because I think that's relevant as will come out later in the conversation.
Okay, so my name's Rachel. I'm 53 now, and I've worked in the world of infant feeding support for 20 years, 22 years actually now. And that was by default. I breastfed my own kids and so on like this, and then worked for different organisations, and now work in Liverpool Women's Hospital doing that very job. So working with people who are in a maternity setting for the patients, that's a big change in their lives, which one I've experienced. So just to go back a little bit, I first developed eating disorder when I was a little bit late in the game, about 16, 17, but I'd always had issues around my weight. It was always been commented on ever since I was a baby. My mum would say, "Oh, little chubby rolls of fat," and I was like, I wasn't born like that. That was what you put in my bottle. And then with hindsight, looking at pictures, I actually wasn't. I wasn't. But then a GP back in 1987, so a long time ago, things have moved on, as you'll know, put me on a diet. A little diet sheet came out and said, "Oh, yes, you are rather chubby, aren't you?" Yes, and that kind of 1986 white coat kind of vibe way. So that was it. Started on, well, I'd already hated my body before that, so now I hated it even more. And then I took that was my first diet, and I've been on it ever since.
Wow.
So it got extreme. I've weighed so low. And then I went to the local general ward many times, the local psych ward. And then I was lucky enough to get into 2 private units. One was in London and one was in Manchester.
How old were you at that time?
The first one, I was 17. So it was just on the cusp of being an adult. So I just about scraped in. The second one, I was maybe about 21. Okay. So there's a difference between being recovered and weight restored than being recovered and weight restored and happy.
Okay.
There is that, yeah. You can be weight restored and still be in absolute chaos in the mind. So the second one, I was like 21, and I thought, oh my goodness, something clicked. I was missing out. My friends were going out, getting married, having kids, going parties, all of that. And I kind of, okay. So there was another vibe to get in, getting better. But it never, ever went away. It was always sort of there. It's always here. Went through life, did college, uni, got married, had a few kids, all of that kind of thing. So fast forward to menopause.
Okay,
so I did all the pregnancy. That was fine.
Into those intermediate life state. Well, I say intermediate, they're absolutely chaotic for some people. that transition into becoming a mum is the biggest thing most of us ever do. Did it
Mhm.
did it kind of fall into the background, would you say, or was it always there tapping on your shoulder?
I was always aware of what I looked like and having to live up to a
Okay.
standard, and losing the baby
Okay.
weight is a
Yeah,
thing.
it's massive.
Yeah. Not so much nowadays, but my youngest is 20, so yeah, losing the baby weight was a thing.
Mhm.
You read it, you see it. I've moved away from magazines because I think that was my first trigger. Now we have internet. So yeah, I kind of got through, but it was in the background. I had kids to look after. I had
Mm.
daughters. So having daughters, you are super, super aware that you do not ever want them to follow that path. So right up until they were teens, it was fine. And then I became more transparent with it. We would talk about it. Kind of us new generation where my mum would go, "Oh, she's anorexic." Whereas I go, "Oh yeah, has an eating disorder, thanks." That kind of
That's
difference.
really
So
interesting
very
that your mum would whisper it, isn't it? I mean, that speaks volumes of we have to mention this, but we don't want to really say it out loud.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't it's get better because the neighbours are, talking about, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
As if it was some kind of lifestyle choice that I'd picked on. We know now
Oh,
in 2026 it's an
yeah.
illness. It is not a lifestyle
And
decision.
it's
I didn't wake up one morning and decide, oh yeah, I think I'll lose all, three quarters of my body weight. I don't think I'll do that. And
people.
all the
Do you think, looking back then, people really understood that it was an illness? Because I can't separate what I know as a doctor in terms of how serious and life threatening it can be from what people generally know and assume about it. My impression is that most people think it's something you can just get over, in the same way that with some addictions, people who don't really understand it think, well, why can't you just stop drinking? Why can't you just stop smoking? I
Mhm.
think there's still an attitude of you just need to snap out of it. Would you say I'm right or wrong, or what's your experience of that over the years?
It goes deep. And there was another doctor that told me it's possibly linked to, and I've done sort of research on babies and the connections and how babies are born and how they're wired. So there was a researcher or doctor, psychologist person called, you've heard of
Oh
John
yeah.
Bowlby, who did the attachment
Mhm.
theory. So going back to when I was very, very young, I had a period of separation at the age of 2 because my mum was very poorly after having my sister. And for a good 4 or 6 months, I didn't see my sister or my mum. I was with a relative and stuff. So the brain connections that kind of are supposed to do this may have done
Mhm.
this. So now we know things like skin to skin, attachment, baby wearing, baby massage, baby yogas, all of that type of thing connect those brain things. But in the 70s, nobody knew that. We just kind of did. I was put in the garden in a pram. So that could be a
Mm.
theory. Then there's a comparison. My sister was probably what we diagnose now with ARFID,
Mhm.
which she was a very, very, I'm not eating that. Oh, she was a delicate, can't say this, but she was much different to what I look like.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there was always that comparison. There's only 2 years difference. So we grew up wearing the same stuff,
Mhm.
which I made a thing not never to do with mine. But so there was a
Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s, it was fine to say to your children, oh, you're a little bit chubby, little chubster, skinny malinks is what my sister got. And I was like, oh, must be different. That's when I probably learned that I hated my body because it didn't look like hers.
When I when I
So,
think back to growing up myself in the 80s though among friends, yeah, we had the skinny friend and the chubby friend, and we all just use those terms quite openly without
yeah,
any thought to the impact that might have on somebody for the rest of their life. It was just everybody spoke like that in class. And it's looking back
yeah,
now, I kind of gulp a bit, and I don't know whether that's, I hope it's a bit better. My kids are 16 and 18, and they're much more familiar with terms like body shaming. And so I think it
yeah.
has got better. But God, in the 80s, I'm sure many people listening will agree that, yeah, skinny malinks.
Yeah, it had to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was part of the lingo. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. And then we had
Yeah.
magazines. Okay. Oh, there was Weight Watchers. There was when I did that diet that I mentioned before, my mum was like, "Should we go to Weight
Mm,
Watchers?" Sorry, I'm 14. You know, let's not. And then I did make the mistake at the age of 16, 17 of working in a club collecting glasses, but also attached to a gym. So I then got a bit addicted to the old exercise, which was great. So I lost weight and it was then visible. I couldn't really deny it after that. So then the treatment set in. I was lucky, so lucky to get those 2 private units on the
mm,
NHS. So the second one, I was like, okay, come on, you're grown up, you've got a life, let's go live it. And I did for a while. It was still, like you said, it was still there in there, but I think it was functioning, I
yeah.
think would be the
Yeah.
word. So I got periods back. I was able to have children. They're all fine. There was no
Mm,
issues. A little bit anemic, but nothing out of the ordinary to say. Then, so we coped with them changes. Then you do the same again when you hit this menopause. And I've seen a few of your Instagrams and things on the menopause
mhm,
weight that we are not supposed to get, but is a natural thing. And I was only saying this the other day. We have, it seems like we have 3 stages in life. One is where you grow,
mhm,
one is where you reproduce, and one is where you chill out,
mm,
right? And it's that chill out bit where we want to do exactly that. Got about 30 odd years left on the planet, which isn't a long time. Let's enjoy it. But now we have to get rid of our menopause
mm,
belly and we have to take some drugs and we have to take some supplements and we have to have glowing skin and
mm,
we also have to look after our elderly parents. We also have to go to work every day. We also have to pay the bills. But God forbid we don't look like a catwalk supermodel. Let's not have the figure that we had when we were 20
mhm,
at 50. But media would have it. Well, why would we not have? Oh my gosh, she's aged, hasn't she? Oh, she's and you're like, hang on, where did all this come from? Then we got fueled by weight loss
yeah.
tips. That is horrific. And that is a whole nother podcast I could do on that as well, and how they affect people with eating disorders
Mm,
and how nobody seems to care, really. So you're like, panic, panic, panic mode. It was almost tangible, this panic inside that I was like, what if I have to get a bigger uniform at work? What if I get that middle thing going on? What if that happened? Not the fact that I could still breathe and function and be alive. It was more, I then relapsed
S
lifestyle.
was this panic in anticipation of what might happen based on all the conversation around it, as opposed to actually needing a new uniform? Is that what you're describing? Your mind's being cast forward into, "This is a big threat."
It was like that little bit that I'd managed to function with that was quiet and
Yeah.
fine woke up
Okay.
and went, I'm coming back to get you now.
Right.
Right? Just at puberty where your body is
Yeah.
changing, just at maternity where your body is changing, this is like, we're not going to go there. We can prevent this time. Let's lose some weight
Okay.
in case. And that is a very, very anorexic thought. I will just lose weight in case I gain weight.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how. Yeah, so that's the mindset. And that's where the illness is because rationally, that makes no sense.
Mhm.
Let's lose weight in case I gain
Yeah.
weight. But in the same way as anyone with an addiction thinks, I can just have one more, I can just do it again and it'll be fine. It's that brain.
It's a different certain control. It's not rational
Yeah.
thought, calm, logic thinking. It's purely emotional. Yeah.
But this time I did have experience on my side. So I recognized it and I thought, oh my goodness, this is happening again and I'm not prepared to waste. And I don't really want to be a 53-year-old anorexic. I really
Mm.
don't, or 53 with an eating disorder. So I did go and get some help, and I have regained quite a lot of the weight that I lost. And now I'm stronger, and I can actually go with that experience. what actually just happened? Why did it happen? And where did it come from? And things that you've said, yeah, it was that society's expectations combined with the illness and that train of thought. That's what mental health and mental illness
Mm.
does. It it's like it's one of those candles that relights
Mm.
itself. But age came experience
Yeah.
and the ability to be able to actually say, yeah, and talk about it.
And I think your story made me think about how, because we've got really quite poor data on how many women are affected. Or I should say people, because it's not exclusively women, it
Mhm.
still tips towards women. But my thinking was there will be millions, certainly thousands, probably millions of women who don't ever get help, or have perhaps tried to seek help and not been bad enough, because my experience is that
Yeah.
eating disorders services, like a lot of things in the NHS, are very, very overstretched, and they have to set boundaries and criteria. And I've had to turn some people away and say, I know this is a problem for you, but it isn't bad enough to meet the criteria. And then people are having to rely on charities and self help organizations, which can be fantastic. I'm not minimizing that. But I think the estimate, when I tried to look before we started speaking, is that probably at any one time it's about 8 to 15% of the population are living with an eating disorder. And I thought, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's even slightly higher, because how many people are just quietly
Mm.
trying to manage this, dreading perhaps what comes on the next page of the newspaper or the next page of their social media feed, which, as we've said, is very, certainly in the last few years, has been exploding with chatter about weight loss injections, and it's undone a lot of the body positivity work. But you have had a positive experience of being able to get help, and some of that maybe because of where you live, but I suspect your experience as well probably went a long way towards knowing you needed it and being able to say some of the right things, perhaps, do you think?
Yeah, just to go back to what you said then about you're not bad
Mm.
enough. And I don't know if that's because doctors' hands are tied with financial aspects, but that is a massive issue that needs to
Yeah.
change. If someone presents themselves in a GP surgery and says, I think I've got an eating disorder or I have got an eating disorder, then that is, they have took the courage to get to you. They are ill. Yeah. In the same way as someone presents with, I think I may have broken my leg. Yeah. Because if a doctor rather says, then that's great, I acknowledge that, but you're not bad enough. That person will go back and say, okay, challenge accepted.
Yeah. And I,
Then present to you and then go, right, I am really bad. They'll lose us several more kilos. They've accepted. How bad do I have to be before I can get help? Then they present back. And the worst thing that happens, you're too sick to treat.
so my experience, I'll share a story of this scenario with a teenager. And this was more of a typical scenario where the parents have brought their teenage daughter in because they're concerned that they are recognizing patterns of restrictive eating at this stage. And
Mhm.
teenagers are not usually that chatty when they're brought to the doctor unwillingly. So she didn't really want to be there, and that was fine. And I happened to have a medical student with me at the time, and she was, by in the cold metrics, a healthy weight. And I could see the writing was on the wall with this family of what they were worried about, and what they were concerned was laying over the hill. But in order, and I'm going back a few years, it may well have changed. I don't want people to pile on and say, that's not what it's like now. This was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe slightly longer. At that time, for her to be able to access adolescent support services on the NHS,
Mhm.
her weight needed to have dropped below a certain threshold, because the service was so under resourced. That was the entry criteria. Luckily, after they'd left, I say luckily, it's not really luckily, because they should have been able to access help early on, and it may well
Mhm.
have improved. After she left, the medical student that was with me she shared that she'd had difficulties with restrictive eating and she'd got really good support from this
Mhm.
eating disorders charity Beats. I had never heard of them, and this is another issue in that there are lots of voluntary organisations that we don't even get to learn about as doctors because there's no way of us finding out about it. So I was able to ring that family later that day and just say, whilst the NHS are not able to offer anything at this stage, here is somewhere you could potentially get help. And I didn't see that family again. I don't work at that practice anymore. But I come back to it as an example of, okay, this is how stretched we are, in the same way that in sadly a lot of mental health services, again, it's starting to improve in some areas. If you are not causing absolute chaos to everybody, you're not bad enough, and off you go and go onto a waiting list for talking therapy. And you think, yeah, but we know
Mm.
what's coming. But this is the reality of living in a very stretched and underfunded system. But so I would hope that nobody would say to a patient directly, you're not bad enough, off you go, because you're right. That would be an absolutely appalling way to practice medicine.
I think that's perhaps what we hear.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I think it's having something. It's one, we can do a lot as GPs to be compassionate and manage people and give them
Mhm.
somewhere to come. The worrying time is when you think this is reaching more than I can manage or more than I can offer. And the patient is dropping little clues as to, I really want help, but I want you to offer it. It becomes this I'm trying to put the case in front of you, and then sometimes not having anywhere to go with that person. It's one of the hardest things about working in the NHS as a doctor, is knowing what that person needs and what you could prevent, and then going, oh, but you're going to have to
Yeah.
wait. But you've had a positive experience of accessing help. And
Yeah. So it was actually the physician's assistant,
okay.
not the GP. So it was one referral to a trust called
Mm-hmm.
Merseycare, and it was in the area that I live in. So Merseycare obviously is Merseyside, Cheshire. It covers a bit of Cheshire and Mersey, but it's split in the eating disorder is split into two. It's got Liverpool and then Knowsley and St Helens. And within 2 weeks, I had a clinical psychologist
Oh wow.
assessment for 90 whole
Wow.
minutes. It was great. Did all the questionnaires. They've got names, I can't remember what they are, but did all those little, on a scale of 1 to 5, how bad,
Mm.
how is a disaster sort of thing. I did all those and it was great. And he said, yes, you do need to take the clinical psychology route. We will offer you the therapy, but you will have to wait. In the meantime, we can offer you guided self-help.
Okay.
So you will have a psychological wellbeing practitioner who you'll meet with once a month, who will call you once a week or as and when needed to check in. Oh, prior to that, I did access staff support. Working in the NHS, we did have a staff support who then went, oh, you do need to, he signposted me to GPs, yeah. So going back to Merseycare, so between September and March, I had this well-being. So they would give me things like very much CBT. It was a whole workbook of not just eating, but how you feel, journaling, diaries, body acceptance, what your feelings are, writing or art therapy. All of that was kind of in there. And that got me through. And it was only working in the NHS, I know what a long waiting list is and what a short one is. So I think this is relatively short.
Yeah.
By the April, I got the letter saying you'll start your clinical psychology in May. So it was less than 12
Okay.
months. They went, sorry for the delay. I went, oh, that's great, thanks. Then I did 30 sessions of what I feel was like the best clinical psychology. Because I was older, wiser, I thought, you've got one chance now. You can do what you did when you were 17 and just sit there and go, hi, psychologist, very lovely. Or you can really get the most out of it. So I got the most out of it. And it was done. Now that I'm partway through it, I'm a trainee counsellor, I can see all the modalities that were being used and how they work. And yeah, it's brilliant. So
Well,
that went a long way to, and it was timely. They did weigh
mhm.
me, which I kind of fed back that wasn't the best idea, because that sort of panicked me again. Then
Did they explain why that was? Is that just part of the protocol and nobody really knows why it's in there, or was there a justification for it?
I went in there, I wasn't underweight. I was well within that beautiful BMI that the NHS love to still
No,
have.
can't get rid of it.
No, it's there. I was bang smack in the middle of it. I left psychology at the lower end of it. I'm not sure what happened. It was like my brain couldn't focus on something, or something was happening. But it was when I left psychology, I was able to use it and then get healthier.
Okay.
That's probably one of the mysteries of psychology that I've yet to learn, is you use it more when it's
Mm,
finished than when you're in
mm.
it. I don't know. So that 2-week assessment, which is their standard policy, any GP referral, regardless of weight, regardless of BMI, regardless of gender, regardless of age, you get a assessment within two
Mm.
weeks,
Yeah.
and they will keep you in their radar until, or put you on the pathway, and you're within that service within 2 weeks,
I would hope that that's
which,
more of a national protocol now. As I say, I can't say with all certainty. I still, yeah, it's a long time since I've needed to refer any adults into a service, and I know that access to a lot of mental health services is on a lot of risk registers, so it is being reviewed constantly. Could we talk a bit about your experience of working, just the general workplace environment, because of the conversation that is ever present in any NHS? It's probably the same in a lot of workplaces, but like you, my background is NHS. There is always a weight related conversation going on somewhere, whether it is
yeah.
Slimming World, Weight Watchers, now it's weight loss injections. There are people that bring in trays of donuts just because it's Friday, and your willingness to indulge gets remarked upon whether you choose to eat the donuts or not. That's my experience of it anyway, is that you almost can't win. But I would imagine your experience of working in that environment will have been quite different.
Yeah, I hear it all day,
Mm.
pretty much every day. The recovery is hard in a society that celebrates weight
Yeah.
loss. So recovery from an ED in a society that is celebrating your weight loss is great. That's what is out there. So I actually have people coming up, have you lost weight? Have you done that? I'm like,
Mm.
it's really not that
Mm.
great. I'm not going to tell you. Some people accuse, I can say accused, it's the wrong word for people who do actually genuinely need them. But they say, are you on the jabs? I said,
Okay.
no, I'm not. I can't afford them. Got better things. I'd rather get a tattoo than weight loss jabs. But it's me. So it's the I'm being good.
Mhm.
I'm being good. I've only had half a Ribena today.
Mm.
Really? Okay. Because it's in a ward and maternity, then the scales. So they'll all have a little weigh
Mm.
in. Okay, yeah. What have you got for your break? It's constantly talk about
Mm.
food. I'm like, stop, stop. We don't need to. I'm trying to have gentle conversations to younger staff members that they're beautiful. They don't need to. They need to celebrate life. Don't be sucked in a gentle kind of, I'm not really saying this to you, but let's go and talk about something else. I need to change that culture. I need to have a word with Docky Health. I need to have a word with HR, and I need to get maybe some publicity out there to say what is appropriate conversations, the things we talk about, things we don't. Maybe put this in the category of this is what we don't talk about. Commenting on, oh, you look great if you lost weight. My body's my body. Then I had people, oh, you look so much better since you gained weight.
Mm.
You've gained your weight back on, haven't you? Well, that's none of your business what I look like.
Mm.
It's really not. How I do my job is your business, but how I look when it's not. I don't really mind if my uniform doesn't hang on me or is snug. It's this is me, this is what it is. But when someone actually says that to your face, you go, is it really that new? And I can feel that little bit of and I have to go, no, stop, ignore it,
Mm.
and have use those mechanisms now more positively to go, they don't know.
Mm.
They don't know.
Mm.
So yeah, it's hard as a society. We've got it's a culture. It really is a culture. The clubs, the constant adverts, the constant new me, new year, new body. Let's do this. No, we don't. We don't really need to. I was watching. This is quite deep
Go
as
ahead.
well. There was two birds outside, and they were both eating seed. One was a little wood pigeon, and one was a little sparrow. And I thought, I can imagine their conversation wouldn't be the wood pigeon saying, "I've been good. I'm only having 4 seeds today. I really need to be as thin as you are." And the sparrow going, "Oh yeah, look at me. I'm so." Or the sparrow going, "Oh, it's right. I want to be as big as you." And it's you can just with any species that kind of worry, assume that we're going to stay the same shape or we're all going to be the same shape, and that the smaller we shrink ourselves, the more we are
Yeah.
celebrated. But humans are
And
different.
it's the way that it gets conflated with morality that bothers me more than anything. In that, yes, like you say, I'm being good. I know what people mean intuitively, but actually, it's got nothing to do with skill or your worth as a person. And it's such a part of the national conversation all of the time, and has been for as long as I can remember. I mean, my mum has struggled with her weight for my entire life. I grew up, there was certain food on one side of the fridge that you didn't touch because that was mum's diet food. And, every 3 months it would change, or there was boxes of Cambridge diet that was standing in the hallway and you had to kind of shuffle past them. It was just always there. And my friends' mums were similar as well. And so I think a lot of us are carrying some of that through, and like you say, and you focus in on it more when you have children and suddenly you become conscious of what you're eating. But in the workplace, I do see a food culture that I imagine must be very, very difficult. Night shifts in particular, this culture of bringing in a selection of stuff, usually crap, sweets and crisps and things,
Yeah,
and putting it out like a buffet for a night shift as a little comfort. And I think it makes it difficult for everybody then, because how you respond to it is very much on display, and people will comment. And I think they comment without really thinking how that might be received. And I think it's to say somebody looks nice is one thing and can be
yeah,
well received. You don't really need to narrow it down any more than that, do you? To the specifics of why you look nice. That's what I would like to aim for, a situation where you go, you look nice today.
yeah.
Not you look.
I just decided I would be quite transparent and say, because I did take a little bit of time off, and people say, "Oh, have you been put?" I was like, "No, I had an eating disorder."
Mm,
I was quite transparent. If people ask, I didn't deny it.
mm,
So I think slowly that people will say, "Oh, your hair looks really nice."
right.
I'm like, I can just see that they were I'm like, "Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It looks fab." My other best answer is when they say, "Oh, I'm being good. I've only had half a Ribena." Why would you get arrested if you ate a
Mm,
whole one?
mm,
It's just little thing, and you go, "Yeah, I didn't suppose I would be
mm,
really."
mm,
We're gonna lose appetite. We're gonna lose health, strength, and well-being. We don't want to go back to the 90s. Really
mm,
don't. We had a period in the 2000s and the 2010s where we were getting somewhere, I
mm,
think. And yeah, we seem to have took a couple of steps
mm.
back. And
In in
yeah,
the therapy that you've had, I mean, it sounds like it was very much weighted towards psychotherapy, which I can understand is probably. Is it fair to say that that's what's moved the needle most? I'm curious as to how much of the therapy and helping people to recover covers nutrition.
there was dietitian input as well. When my therapist could see that I was struggling with weight, they would stop the psychotherapy and let's see what's happening for you
Mhm.
physically. There was regular checkups with GP for blood pressure, making sure electrolytes and things were in place, that kind of thing as well.
I'm curious to know how it feels when you're struggling and the urge to restrict your eating is very strong. How do you kind of perceive food by way of its nutritional values, if that makes sense? What I'm wondering is there a movement to try and get you to frame food as less of a threat and more as nourishment? And how does that feel when you're in the grips of an eating disorder? I think that's the bit I'm trying to understand.
We need to move away from the good food and the bad
Okay.
food. Like when you said your mum had a side of the fridge with the good
The
food
diet
on,
food.
and then there was diet food. Yeah, my mum was the same with the rye
Mm.
beaters. So there is no good food and bad food. Depends how you look at it. Everyone's got their own diet. It's not the right word, or way of eating.
Mhm.
There's never been any shortage of plans. Then do we look at food as energy? It does
Mhm.
work. Then you go, so without it, we die. So what do we use? And yet there will always be a little part of my wired brain that will look at donuts different to apples. But then I go, I could have 100 calories of donut, 100 calories of apple. Is surely that is not is that the
Mhm.
same? And then I start getting into a mindset of, and then that's sort of dangerous. What I kind of want is that listening to bodies and
Mm.
appetite. And it's okay to have something if that's what I want at that time, then that's what I'll have. And I may struggle with that for a long time.
Mhm.
I think there's part of it that, in the same way as anybody with an addiction, when they're faced with that, it's not second nature to just go, "Oh, have we're all." Well, personally, I'm always going to think about that. There's still little parts of it that I will always, I think, carry around with me. Eating out and about, eating in public, that's massive. That kind of thing is still work in
Mhm.
progress, which I'm hoping I haven't passed. My daughters have seen that and have not got an issue with it. And I'm so happy that that hasn't been an issue for them. So, yeah, there's still parts of it that are a work in progress and probably always will be around food. But I accept myself in the body that I've got and that it does need fuel and it does need nourishment. And I can have that and it's okay.
Do you ever notice things in other people around their food choices and the language they use around food that sets your radar off and makes you recognize that perhaps somebody else might be struggling? I mean, I hear a lot of stories, and sometimes among friends and sometimes through friends of friends, about people setting very rigid rules about what they can and can't eat because of beliefs about food. And some of this is celebrated on social media with demonizing certain food groups, which bothers me slightly. But with your experience of having difficulties in this area, are you ever in a situation where you listen to somebody talking about food rules and things and you think, I recognize here that this person might be treading a difficult path about food?
There's a lot of disordered eating, which is slightly different to having an eating disorder. So the disordered eating and the restrictions. There's one also
Mm,
orthorexia, which you may have heard of, which is only specific what we deem as the health foods, quite restrictive in that way. ARFID is another. These are kind of newer disorders that have come about, which is the restrictive, but I will eat certain things. And that's where you can have someone who looks like a healthy weight, but are very restrict. I will only eat these things because they're safe.
mm,
So we change the wording. So the danger is this is my safe food, whereas a different generation might use this is my good
okay.
food. So people who've got safe foods, that is a word that is, oh, what makes it
Okay.
safe? Because you know it and you know how many calories are in it, you know its macro count and all of whatever is in it that way. So that can be any food.
Mm,
It doesn't always have to be a what is stereotypically a diet food. I've known people have sausage rolls as their safe food, but that's all they will have.
mm,
And their menu is quite limited because if they come out of that menu, it's unfamiliar territory. And that's another eating disorder. So we're looking at more disordered eating as well as the three or four standard ones that we all
Diagnose.
know
Yeah.
and most,
Yeah.
yeah, diagnosis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, and actually, just to make that same point, that eating disorders are distinctly different from disordered eating, but I would imagine they are perhaps branches of a same tree, but probably fall differently on that same tree.
I think gateway might
Yeah,
be the
yeah,
word. It's like,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So, what do we need to do better? What needs to change? What big levers could we pull on, do you think?
there are so many. We just, humans are
Mm,
humans, and we need to accept ourselves as humans. Media, TV, culture, the diet industry, the medical industry, the psychotherapy industry all need to work together.
mm,
And this is my ideal if I could change it all now. There will be no adverts for diets. If someone was struggling, they will get some help from a psychologist and a dietitian. We would look at food as nutrition, and we would celebrate our bodies at whatever stage they're
mm.
at, whether that's a newborn or whether that's at the other end of the scale, and everything in between will be classed as beautiful and a miracle, not something that has to be constantly shrunk to conform to a standard that is an idealistic dream
Yeah,
that somebody somewhere made up.
yeah.
That we all have to be this small.
Mm,
Healthy, yes, because there's, you could say, I'm not talking about let's all be unhealthy, and on that scale of obesity and things can be unhealthy, but if you're healthy and that is your body, then let's love it for what it can do,
mm.
not for what society thinks it should look
Yeah,
like.
yeah, as opposed to what it would look like. I agree, and I think I've thought a lot about this. And if you drill it down, your body's the greatest thing you'll ever own. If you think of the money we spend on cars and houses and insurance and all those things, and we just take our body for granted. And then suddenly it doesn't quite do what you want it to do one day when you're poorly or you have a fall, or the women you work with, you struggle to breastfeed, and suddenly you think, actually, there's a relationship here that needs to be nurtured, and that relationship needs a bit of compassion, and then it will repay you for a very long time to come. But it's definitely complicated, isn't it?
And then for those with eating disorders, it's acceptance,
Mm,
it's compassion, it's empathy. It's not a lifestyle. Once you're in that, it's a very weird thing because you can't put a cause on it. You just know it's an
mm.
illness, but it's the things that we think that it's not that may have caused it. So it ends up circular, and that even confuses me. That where and why did I get this?
We agonize a lot over causes of
Um,
things, and I think sometimes we need to let some of it go. Yes, it can be helpful in some instances, particularly if there is a modifiable cause. But a lot of us, with a lot of things that we wrestle with, would be better just to work on acceptance, whether that's a side to your personality that overreacts, and just go, okay, this is part of my wiring. And I talk a lot about the chimp paradox, and it's a fantastic book that's really helped me understand the brain, and that model teaches this, that actually there are sides to our chimp, our personality, that you can't change, but you have to manage. And it brings you to a position where you go, yeah, okay, if I can work out what sets me off and what pushes my buttons, I can better manage it in the future rather than wondering or blaming my parents because they brought me up this way. And I think that would be, if we could get everybody to do a bit of that work, we'd be a bit more compassionate for one another as well, because we'd recognize that we've all got stuff that we'd like to be different, but it isn't. And so making the best of what you've got, certainly. Great. Any final words you would like to say to somebody who's been listening to this and thinking, I might have some work to do?
Listen to your
Mm,
instinct. There's a voice that, if for someone who feels like they're going down that slippery slope of an eating disorder, there's a voice that's telling them that they have to abide by certain rules, and bad things will happen if they don't. For me, it was separating that eating disorder voice from the logical, rational side that was, this makes no sense.
Okay.
So that was my instinct. Listen to the instinct. There's help there. There's lots of help there. There's lots of books written on it, but acknowledge that it's okay to have this, and it's never your fault. It's never ever your fault. You might feel that it's your fault. You might pick up those vibes that I should be able to get better. It's just food, but it isn't. It's a struggle and it's a battle, and you will need that energy. And recovery is okay, and recovery is possible.
Mm. Mm.
And eating disorders come in all shapes and sizes, and they don't discriminate. And nobody's is any less valid than anybody else's. But
Mm.
we're all worthy of nourishment. We're all worthy of the air we breathe, and we're all worthy of help to help us with it. Anyone who's looking after somebody with an eating disorder, look after yourselves. Find your own therapy as well, because you'll need it. It's not the easiest thing in the world to live with. It's not the easiest thing in the world to watch somebody you love have it. But yeah, and there is support for carers and parents and relatives of people with eating disorder. That is separate. It's not family therapy, it's separate from the person with the illness.
Great.
But it is there. And it's okay to ask for that, and it's okay to be self-compassionate, and it's okay to look after yourself.
Great. I couldn't think of any better words to follow up on that. So, Rachel, thanks very much for sharing your story. I hope people get some comfort and inspiration from it. Thank you.